The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.
Fady, thank you for being with us and taking our questions. What does ICC Georgia mean exactly under economic dependence for this index's purposes?
You know, it's an index that we produce since 2022. We take 5 factors into consideration to evaluate the dependency of Georgia on foreign countries. Export, import, FDI, total remittances, and money from travel, tourism. So we compound those 5 factors for every country, and then we follow quarter by quarter and year by year the progress or the regress or the progress. And this was initially created in 2022 after the war between Russia and Ukraine, when Georgia started being flooded by Russian businesses coming here. And we realized that our dependency on Russia had increased tremendously. So we wanted to quantify it, and through this index, or dashboard rather, it's more of a dashboard than an index, we were able to follow in percentage of the total economic activity for every country how much it was, and in percentage of the GDP as well. So this is how it started, and now it is it's a very interesting document because it gives you a full vision of the economic landscape of Georgia.
What are some of the major tendency changes that this index or dashboard shows over these years, like starting from 2022 to 2024, right?
Yeah, 2024. I will tell you, I will even start from 2003. Because also we calculated for 2003, which was the last year of President Shevardnadze. We did 2012, which was the last year of President Saakashvili, and then we started with 2022. I will tell you, I will speak of Russia, because I mean Russia is a very important component of the economic life of Georgia, because you know they are the neighbors, and we are dependent on them for a lot of export and imports as well, and remittances. But I will give you an idea. In 2003, our dependency on Russia was 16%. In 2012, when Saakashvili left office, his government, it was at 9%. So between 2003 and 2012, we decreased our economic dependency on Russia. In 2022, it climbed to 20%. So we, even more than during the Shevardnadze's time, we were dependent on Russia. And then it started going down, and now in 2024, it reached 12%, which is at the same level as Turkey. Turkey and Russia are at 11.8%, both of them. The EU has been very steady, always around 20%, 19% till 21% since 2003. But what we have noticed this year is that other countries are getting more countries that are too small to be identified, but so they are all under one denomination, other countries. Like in 2023, they represented 12% of the total economic activity. Now they represent 14%.
What about China?
China has increased, mainly the imports from China has increased. The rest did not increase, neither our exports, nor the remittances, nor FDI, or even tourism. But the imports have increased from China, and that's why the figure of China increased by 1% compared to last year.
Like you look at EU countries, do you look at, for example, like Central Asian countries also? We
do look at Central Asian countries, and we notice that Kazakhstan has improved on our dashboard substantially, mainly from tourism. It's mainly from tourism. So there is a lot of tourism coming from Kazakhstan, for example.
Now to go into more like interpretations, can we say at this point that Georgia's economy is diversified?
I think so. When your biggest economic partner represents 20%, and then the number two is at 12%, I think that we can say that our economic dependency is diversified.
This stage number one is EU?
Number one is EU. We are at 21% with the EU. So 21% of the total economic activity of Georgia depends on the EU.
Can we say that this dependency on Russia is a problem for Georgia at this stage?
Look, at 12%, I don't believe that it is a problem. We are mainly dependent on import and exports. We were dependent very much on remittances, but the remittances or the money flow for between 2023 and 2024 decreased by $1 billion. You know, our total remittances or money flow in 2023 were about $4 billion. Now they have become $3 billion because Russia went down from 1.5 billion to 500 million. So there has been a huge cut in money flow coming from Russia. So our only dependency is on import and export, which is, not dramatic at the level where they are.
Do you also measure like the structure of this dependence as well? Like which sectors, how much? Is this part of the dashboard at this point?
No, we measure the FDI, the remittances, and the money from tourism. But we don't get, for example, in exports, we don't look, how much minerals have been exported or wine or water or whatever. No, we take the whole figures as they come from the Geostat.
Who will use this index or dashboard?
Everybody.
In your opinion?
All the international financial institutions, they use it. As a matter of fact, when we did our presentation, the IMF was there, and many other international institutions and foreign embassies, because it gives them a perspective, and it gives them a perspective of where they stand as countries as well, because all of them would like to have better numbers with Georgia. For any countries like this, because everything is based on economy and trade. Yeah.
What type of impact does ICC Georgia see with this index and pulling together this index?
I will tell you, there are three things that are kind of that would make you look closely. One of them is FDI. It decreased dramatically. The total FDI went down from 1.9 billion in 2023 to 1.3 billion in 2024. Then the tourism decreased by 6%, but this is mainly due to a huge decrease in Turkish tourism. This means very few Turks came to Georgia in 2024 compared to 2023. And I think, in my personal opinion, it has nothing to do with Georgia. It has to do with the devaluation of the Turkish lira. Probably the Turks find it expensive to come to Georgia, and they would go to their own country for regional tourism. Then the remittances decreased by $1 billion. And the remittances from the United States decreased as well, which was kind of surprising for me because there is a big diaspora of Georgians in the United States, but surprisingly there were less remittances in 2024 than 2023.
Going back to Russia for a moment and looking at the tendency from 2022 to 2024, do you see this so-called Russian booster on Georgia's economy kind of like phasing out? Because this is one of the factors that all the international financial institutions and credit organizations look at and talk about when they pull together the outlooks of economic growth for Georgia?
Yes, I think that we have kind of normalized our economic activity with Russia. You don't have those crazy figures, whether it is FDI or money flow, or tourism even, because even tourism has decreased from Russia. So I think that we have a healthy economic relationship with Russia now. This is, I mean, the way I see the figures, I don't see something like that would raise a red flag as it used to.
From this standpoint, would you say that it was a pragmatic economic policy or pragmatic economic approach to get these dividends from Russia-Ukraine war, as the Georgian Dream did, apparently?
I mean, the Georgian Dream kept the doors open to everybody, including to the Russians. And since the Russians were fleeing their country because of the sanctions, they came to Georgia. Many of those Russians are ethnic Georgians. I mean, we cannot hide it, okay? They don't have a Georgian passport, but they're ethnic Georgians. But then, you know, there was a very big wave of anti-Russian sentiment in Georgia in 2022, 2023. So many of them didn't feel comfortable and left for better skies. Some of them went to Armenia, some of them went to the UAE, to other countries, and many of them left Georgia. And that's why we see a tremendous drop in money flow. $1 billion. I mean, 75% of the money flow is down in a year. So whether it was pragmatic or not pragmatic, that was a political decision. I mean, you cannot judge a political decisions on pragmatism. It was a political decision that they made.
Politics of pragmatism, that's how they called it.
Or the pragmatism of politics.
Yeah. Works either way. What are some of the main conclusions that we can draw from this current index?
That besides import-export, we're not doing very well. This means that tourism is down, money flow is down. This means our expat community is transferring less than they used to. And FDI is down. So what remains is import-export. Import increase more than export. Usually import is linked to FDI. I mean, the more FDI you have, the more imports you have. But in this case, we don't have much FDI and we have imports, which is a bad sign by itself. This means that we are more and more dependent on other countries for our internal consumption. And thus we would be more affected by international inflation, global inflation, by a rise of prices and other factors, which is a weakness that needs to be addressed.
And in this import-export, and especially in re-exports, also we can see, for example, automobiles and right.
Look, I mean, if you look at the figures from the United States, you would see that the imports have decreased slightly compared to 2023, but they are still very substantial. This means that this business of importing used cars to Georgia and re-exporting them is still on. Now, whether they used to export them directly to Russia, now most probably they send them to Central Asia, and from Central Asia they go to Russia. But Georgia is in the epicenter of this business, definitely. And, you know, it doesn't bring any added value to the economy, you know. It's like money transiting. That's it, you know. You pay for the cars from Georgia, they come here. You sell them, the money come back to Georgia or go back directly abroad. So there is no added value for the economy. You're not building businesses and creating a lot of jobs and contributing to the economy with this type of business.
What could be some of the recommendations coming from ICC Georgia based on this index? Which are the directions to look at, or do you use this index or dashboard?
There is obviously a lack of confidence in Georgia. Because when you don't have FDI, when you have less tourists coming, when you have less money flowing in the country, this means that there is less confidence. What the government needs to do is to address this lack of confidence and ensure that confidence is restored. But confidence cannot be restored properly if there is internal political tension. So it's all linked together. It's all linked together, plus the tension with the West, the bad press that Georgia has in the West. Having said that, Georgia has very good reputation in the Arab world. I was in the Gulf area a month ago and speaking with big business people, and they all have a very positive image of Georgia, which surprised me on one hand because I know what's going internally, but on the other hand made me happy. This means if there is a change of course in the political line in Georgia, we will be able to stand on our feet pretty fast.
What do figures at this stage show you? Is it realistic to substitute EU contribution to Georgia's economy with Chinese or Central Asian, or what we hear from Georgian government or we see from the Georgian government in the economic policy?
Look, there has been already an increase in import from China and from other non-identified countries. But you cannot, Georgia depends strongly economically on the EU. First of all, because of the Georgian diaspora that is there. And then because it is our natural market. It's a very big market of more than 500 million consumers. It's a market with whom we have a free trade agreement. This means it's easy to export there, or easier to export there. And the euro is stable. The Georgians are used to European products now after the collapse of the Soviet Union. I mean, they identified good quality products that they bring from there. There is regularity from Europe to Georgia and from Georgia to Europe. Whereas I'm not sure how regular, for example, could be the exports from Georgia to China. That can close on the exports anytime, like Russia, I mean, it's not like a very dependable country that goes by the book. I think it would be an error to try to substitute. It is not bad to diversify and to improve our, but I mean to say, well, let's scrap the European and Western markets and work with, the Southeast Asia, we will be another North Korea here.
And my last question, Fady, how do you explain why are the economic growth outlooks so much polarized? I mean, you can find a group of analysts and group of experts who, and also like international organizations at this point, who will tell you that for the coming 2 years, Georgia will have quite high economic growth, right? Like around 6%, maybe even higher. ADB even told us that they might be changing their outlook from 6% to even higher. And on the other hand, you have another group of analysts and experts who will tell you that in the long run this growth is not sustainable, and this political isolation from the West will have its impact on the economic growth. I mean, what should we believe?
International financial institutions, they get their data from the national bank mainly. Okay, so they base their analysis on the figures that they get from government. Independent observers, they gather their data from different sources, whether it's the private sector or the national bank or the government or other sources as well, or their own research. So they have a more diversified source of information than the international financial institutions. The international financial institutions over the past 27 years that I had a business organization here, most of the time have been wrong in their calculations of or forecast of the GDP. They have been systematically wrong, and that's why every 2-3 months you see they readjust their figures, and usually they bring them down, they don't bring them up. But what is very important to know, so you can really understand where we could stand with our economic growth, is to understand what is driving this economic growth. Is it the private sector driving the economic growth? It is government spending that is driving the economic growth. Is it, I don't know, donors that are spending in the country? So unless you identify the main source of growth, the main parameters that are driving this growth, you will never really understand how much growth you're going to have. So let's assume the government is going to spend by, building roads or opening highways. This will have a huge impact on the economic growth of the country. If the government doesn't have money to spend, then the growth will be much less. What is for sure is that the contribution of the private sector in this growth will not be as big as the preceding years. This is my personal opinion, because the private sector is struggling. You have a group of companies that are doing pretty well, those big ones, you see. Why? Because let's assume you have luxury cars dealers here. They are selling much more cars today than they were selling 5 years ago, luxury cars. Why? Because people from the region are coming to buy those luxury cars. And there is now a larger number of wealthy Georgians who have been working close to the government for 12 years already, who amassed a certain wealth and who are spending this wealth in Georgia. And this is contributing, on the reviving the restaurants, the regional tourism, Lopota, and buying Porsches and Mercedes and, chronograph and all this kind of thing. There is money being spent here, and there is money being spent by tourists who are coming, and that's why what we need to focus on is high-end tourists. This means if you bring tourists from the Gulf, he will go to chronograph and buy a watch for $50,000. If you bring a tourist from, the UK, those backpackers, they will come here with their food for 1 week in their backpack. So this is where we need to readjust our focus and to understand from where the growth will be coming, to analyze it.
The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.